Alrighty, so what I've done is I prepared my cutting board and my hammer board already, chopping board. I put paper on top of it, and it's only because I like a clean surface area. At the end of the day, I can chuck that in the bin, and I haven't made too much of a mess. But you don't have to if you don't want to, if you're happy with using straight onto the board. Also, too, just remember that some of these boards are used for cutting out rivets and eyelets, so they will have holes in them. You get a flatter surface if you put paper on top. Once again, for demonstration purposes, I'm using this in the room because only one person there using it. But for the 20 of you using it a lot, we're going to be going down and I'll show you the extractor fan in the other room. Okay, so we are doing an open stage 2 of our open seam. So where we need to press and glue that open. I am going to pre-press or pre-rub, and I do that by opening up that seam for a start, putting it down flat, and like I was talking to you before, just rolling and jumping along that seam. Okay, flipping it over, doing the same on the other side. You'll find that a pre-rub actually gets you, especially when it comes to thicker leathers, gets you a much better result if you do that first, rather than just jumping straight into the gluing. Okay, once I pre-rubbed in a little bit, I'm going to grab some of my glue. I am not going to use a whole lot of glue, guys. You only really just need to make it a little bit of glue just so that it stays on. And I'm doing it in a little bit of a dashy mode, but not quite. Putting enough on, but as you can see, it's not entirely all that wet. And then I'm pushing from my seam out. Pushing from my seam out so that I don't get ridges in it. Same deal now, I'm going to rub it. I'm rubbing it sideways, that way, so that it rubs the seam from the seam out to flatten it down. Okay, so make sure it's nice and flat. Then I'm going to do the other side. Don't need a whole lot of glue. We don't want to be, and because what's going to happen if we use a whole lot of glue, it's just going to ooze out, which we don't want it oozing out. We just want to hold that seam flattened down. Okay, once again, haven't used a whole lot of glue. Have used a little bit more glue in the middle for a specific reason, because I'm hoping, yes, that it's going to ooze out for you. So I'm pushing with my fingers and I'm rolling it out. I'll go back to that little part. No, I did it there as well. Okay, so that's what happens. It oozes out. Okay, it's not a bad thing. It's not really going to matter, other than it's a bit of a tacky on the inside. Just be mindful though, it will transfer to the top of your hammer. So make sure you rub it off if you get stuff on there. And go through again. So, but if you can do it without oozing, you're going to get a much cleaner, neater finish. It's not going to come through to the wrong side, of it to the right side, so it's not going to affect the look of your garment at all. But make sure you give it a rub on that side as well. Nice and flat seam, okay? Massive difference between a flat seam and a seam that's not flat. And what you want is a nice flat seam. If you were going to stitch a seam that was going to go into a waistband or into an armhole or into another leather seam, what you'd want to be doing is trimming back your seams, or diagonally cutting back your seams at the top, or wherever that seam was going to go into something. So if this was going to be, what have I got? Yes, here, my jeans. That seam that comes up into my waistband there, I'd be trimming back the bulk of that seam so that when it comes into the waistband, it's not so bulky. Okay, so what I've done is I've just diagonally trimmed off the ends. If you know it's not, for instance, if this was the hem seam on my jacket that was just coming up as a hem and I was attaching it to a lining, not so important because your lining's not so bulky. But if you're attaching that to another leather seam, you want to be trimming him back. Okay.